제공주 쇼인 베결로 니동게다 십주십시 칠루 니동주든 다우순베 세버주 니무디니 강제 베기 캐슬한서 첼숨 페미세르케 망베 마주 삼바직든기 야말 신주월 ngogöche rawangelanchebe tüten tengopjungapge bateta geje bawbome nimuchegi shungde zewote kyangsingye zewodi tolaya kunjungi zo Italy rangyong ku lotirol ke sinzi Dr. Arno Kombacher chogi u chade uti khajikta tana shin lotirol ki gyasa bolzano na yebe Europe shen tembe zonzi ki u chade khaji tana shin France chezo apedön gyapgyo chobe tumi khajikta shen Australia ta Canada chezo tumi ta geji pedön legu khang Australia pedön henzo gi chongmi chele drobe Zenjo Pemi Wadi Dogship Chochunki, Chongmije Lenshunayo.
On March 1959, the nationwide Tibetan resistance culminated in the Tibetan national uprising against the Chinese in the Tibetan capital Lhasa. The Chinese retaliated with ruthlessness unknown to the Tibetans, resulting in the death of hundreds of thousands of Tibetans by the Chinese military forces. Since then, Tibetans worldwide observe this fateful day as the Tibetan National Uprising Day. Today, March 10, 2017, we gather here to mark the 58th anniversary of the commemoration of Tibetan National Uprising Day. We have the gracious presence of Dr. Arno Kombacher, Honorable President of South Tyrol, as our chief guest for today's event. We have a team of delegation from South Tyrol, including the Chief of Cabinet of the Autonomous Province of South Tyrol and Head of Education and Training at European Academy Bolzano, URAC Research. We have members of delegation from French Senate, led by Senator Michel Raison and Senator André Gattolin, the President and the Vice President of Tibet Group in French Senate. We also have members of the Tibetan Election Observation Mission, including Senator Lisa Singh and former Senator Consilio Di Nino, here with us today.
Zewonzo ki tongma tsangwa kusheng to panden si kyong cho ki pyo gyagab chenpe gyadar kanying su dengzu nangab dading pyo kim lobda ne ngare tanche pyo gyagab chenpe gyalu bygyo.
Honorable Si Kyung will hoist the Tibetan national flag, and I request the members of students of TCV school to begin singing Tibetan national anthem.
Sangmakushen Rangi Tonia, Pödan Pimitza Dunche, Jebe Luso, Longjutan Jeba Ludon Nankin, Geje Bobomanamki Kadin Jetenta, Yangin Kuiduche, Yangin Aje Kamachirin Shugu.
Let us now observe a minute of silence in honor of those Tibetan martyrs who have sacrificed their lives for the cause of Tibet.
Kamachik Dubai, Sangma Shurona. Dijelaya, Zerim Sumbadela, Dading, Pugim Labdene, Ngaretanje, Sumju Denu, Pugu.
Students of Upper TCV School will now sing the Song of Uprising.
Tashana Dijelaya Zerim Shivadela Peki Lanamebe Uchi Chino Konskam Gun Champachoki Chilujik Don Gupya Tukju Lone Nidon Game Chukjik Pardo Sumji Duden Kap Sosor Zeve Sunti Puik Dan Inji Ni Tola Chokdi Shube Chagdi Chapsi Lamden Sheba Pande Sikyon Chone Unje Nangyu
I request Honorable Si Kyung to release a compilation of 10th March statements of His Holiness the Dalai Lama from the year 1960 to the year 2011 titled Tibet and the Tibetan People's Struggle.
Tushina, Dijela ya Zerim Awadela, Pande, Pemiman Jitu, Soshin, Chalky, Pemiman Jitu, Henzo, Sungshen Nangyo.
Honorable Deputy Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile will deliver the statement on the occasion.
Chino gonzi kyamgu chimbu cholia kosum kube kuja phiba ta chapchik pimi dingzuk mangzu kaosum gitaz na btsu rangjong de jing rawangching de jing jaz na bata pimi dingzuk sishwa na bata rangjong de jing kha gi lene na bata leche na ba Ta nashingi teri sumju dude teng ngap chung ngap jebe tolia che do ngabe shapso ko be chi ge gap kha sumge kunde na bata da se khu gi che de kha gi pha be gindu na ba daram sale khyap gong gi she tine khang gi lob kha gi ke lob na bata and da nashingi daram sale kyagong na liebe pimi dingzu kyagong da shenyang chod kha gi timi namba rangri bunda kenshen pharsum da and lhagwa du chinang gi sago ba samlo lia pemi ma chid lenzo gi chap shu che ye chamri da kuzi shu chob she shue yin On behalf of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile, I would like to heartily welcome to all the distinguished guests and my old friend, Mr. Gunther Gloni, on the occasions of the 50th Tibetan National Uprising Day. Chidil Henzo gi Song Xie Ma, Nian Shu Chou Xie Xue Yin. Bimi Rawang Galang, Sum Ju Tu Den Teng Ngap Chung Ngap Ye Be To, Peme Ma Chidil Hanzo Gi Song Xie, Tering Gi Nimo Dini, Chilo Chidong Gu Ngap Chung Ngap Ye Lor, Gana Ma Be Se Shong Gi, Be Gyagap Chenpo, Sen Ro Cha Yu Nian Ju Si Ju Gi, Dong Ri Marjian Du Duen De, Samuel Debe Tangnu Cheba Mase, Chino Gongsa Jamgu Chimpu Chog, Gujar, Dombe Taushum Chedap, Chusum Piminam, Madru Samba Chigduigi, Hugi Gasal Hazar, Rawang Galan Chimbu Chebe, Pimi Lugyu Nang Shindu Keshe, Nimushi Gimbatan, Pimi Dingzugi, Hugi Geje Bao Pame Nimoyang, Chapchi, Dudin Songzi Shushin Yuebe, Toma Pei Densi Mirigi Tendo, Rangi Chebe Luso Tsun, Yongsu Lui Dong Nankin, Geje Bao Pamu Namgi, Ningdo Dan Zeje La, Gedin Jeden Tang. Dadang, Yamargi Tamra Jingi Suju Wo, Dokjon Narju Damingi Gadu Nyongshi Yoba Namla, Dongsen Yamgi Shuju Mase, Shishu Peminam Gadu Le, Yongyu Tre de Zamlin, Yuju Chizong Shin, Rawang Dang Duami Topdang La, 롱주 토베 초숨 야와 야즈 선데 멸람 슈주이 베단 야셰바니 게럽 루규당 사감 미리 게 유소 곰시 소 강대네 용서 타대 인베 근기 통주스越讲 加拿马为本书河南政治的和个内地用作ham水写不马赛平民崩炸忙不马赛当都将那句菜了的吧当不当却和个却的人生咱们可有了多个当个说舍得菜的西边我个的两个直接女的都穷不当加马王就我西句独足间拉达的切心把卡了，他的每日茶龙用心把南极将对面买呗，许个人把培训月。这了牛东给老人，培个加上他是做预备培，学个什么个社会用处，细节切备两个直接你对，白白能加马的长期年度把当，毛工的差不多各种培训的，让俺人家不让买呗。懂得插起我，让人社交泡沫忙不，故所效率。他把加拿大兄弟没事白白数据我，偏偏说确实个让俺大学，主要没现在top上买不少，偏偏呢，我的当用处设备切切可能如果绝对个拉大的设备，偏偏呢个收到太咋的个，这了你当可老的送，这了你当居住到中年被才给拍了。光是监管全部错票了，等的修改，为民说让王当抓米托当课，写北京第二早朝鲜，让人买菜啷个解决包帮忙，我是相当穷吧，每张家的是不是想个要不汤？但到突然呢，每张家的你是这样一，故说小不汤，每张你是他们得生起因相当买呗，那是有理。大家告诉我，票给大国平民错。确实当确定给予人生可有送给少的太让王买的规定给侧面西北两个北根平民南来南面年个他就送政治的少到当对个政治的都将那句军界买不当心不得平民从不这些往就给兄给责任呢常有美丽的给予了送给快快怪不写下给力的给能行配的给让切动当录制能够过了许多切吧啦年给的尊重切吧呢社会协同先到头为民切实专不难了常人都做的数据可能拉到切呗对面干的是就不当真正他们熟悉那不少了那这差不多破呗没人把这种事就个月，确实怎么拉张境面价值少给年看来，那样算把些呗，彻底去老是绝缘呐。俺领导当学生比，人性当拉家，人娃当孙秀少，娘生吧人呐，控制得到了大就把人呗，控制俺这旁边东西给他不啷啦，尽量当陆地，人当有句说他不拿做些，别觉切讲。你当家了就完美，这绝对白，该兄弟人当当有句陆地的差距那么太短切约，把他们那送对面确定让完了，还将给多些当高干呗，全部数据拉在切些约了，这了你当决定到当不能，咱们现在这边今朝光是讲过全部是错的，那叫大家点的白头给考虑往前听，说不是把个定再个数。西路平民学校针对越被看见那个马这把当，那个这什么用些越把南浪，沙岗所托当战斗车就以内当，去了马这车能没当，卡在前面所刚刚车就因为，第个年的接当的高干的老旁侧面学员，加拿大选举光是讲个全部错的在定当，针对平民。领袖接了南国呢，根据当特殊的数据进行把就话看样当没白马赛，把他们老给人当大去的做行业，今朝或者讲跟全部错的公司党，平民领袖和我们那个数据当真的，别个这边假使用的他 용답라 배전 체시베 시세 낭세기 용다 제신 양 결승 내 답을 편 수딩기 양련 강양 중매 진호 공사 장거 준비 초기 제딘 계단 계시마탄 실루 비민남기 로덴 교매기 셈슈 최고 비미 징주 망조다 제베 배전 제를 때네 비미 대nhập 난게 로레신 제망도 조심 받다 데마타고 로에나 공사초 유럽 저조 초조 쿠샵 미스터 마틴 제주 초단 젠데 나고타 책 렉션 런젠당 솔로바키에 신진 쿠샵 미스터 안드리스 키스카 제 젠데 나유 대신 야가기 계서 딜리 야가기 신진 쿠샵 시리 파너 분가 지 초단 제면 나고 마세 신진 초단 hen 투규 대대는 단델벨 현조기 제거로 의슈 제유 지는 요동 주변 다원 예배 낭 아리스 시시 종지 사바 쿠샵 미스터 렉스 텔리슨 초네 아리스 숑 사베 페던 토 무드 갑교 낭교 마세 개숑당 광서 초기 와 제메 용답당 광서 초단 젠데 슈주 인고 송여바 제기 계진낭 광서 초기 제진라 구구당 페던 토 갑교 도나 전부 용시 예배 상조의 넘버 1 용시 예 대신 스트라스버그당 브라질 유럽 최저당 프랑스 최저 어리 최저 잉글랜드 최저 이탈리 최저 제면 최저의 초선당 오스트레일리아 최저의 투미당 내유 야가기 최저 투미소네 베던도 갑교를 송시당 서거 세다 최저제 조나 예 대신 태변 첩시 초배 냠두인기 토네 태변 최저 베던 갑교 초바시당 니원 최저 베던 갑교 초바시 선주 나여바 제기 베미당 베던 라 갑교르기 누방아베 체로 조신게 데베 튀기 난 잠리 냠데 계속이 초전 토 베던 최저 응아지 림바 숨샤 여바데 당부 찔르 지동 급경압 중하고 다와 주베 난다 니바 지동 급제 주주레지 다와 중예베 난다 스마 지동 급제 주주랭에 다와 중예베 난 제소 조투브 여바탕 다데 차량 잠리 냠데 계속 중지 사바 쿠식 미스터 앤토니 글저 초기 리윤 낭 투항 베던 라캡교 베게테메 캬수 용탑당 회기 최다 레숑 기익 제버 송교 gün에 용탑 제버 양 튼규르당 캡교 차랭 무스 투바 낭규 베규 슈주인 대신 스위스 종계 진입엔 난 잠린 냠데 계속이 조아미 톱당 랭강기 겐진 쿠샵 미스터 제티 알 후신 초네 회난기 조아미 톱당테 투접 연내 송여바테 회난기 조아미 톱당게 내당 신도宣布여바 서버 대나유 지는 이동 주변 다와 당부 난 아리 계서 워싱턴 DC 난電視 제베 라완 칸과 프리덤 하우스 제베 지는 이동 주주를 계지 개갑하기 조아미 톱당당 대베 로고를 년도 되면 난 계지 개갑카 좁게 난네 캬나테 지용네 계지 토 조아미 톱당라 지메 도로 동gen기 개갑 치 독쉐앙 쫑압 임바당 첩시기 라완다 지망기 톱당라 지메 도로 동gen기 개갑 치 독쉐강 임바 문제 터던 셰유 개숑기 외계 첩시기 내당 토 특송 제행기 시주 짐바 남라 교와 마당체 개숑다 표 미릭과 겐다 슉체르 조주당 계진능 경 개숑라 따단 제도도 송대 최동 남양 랩탑 매바 처주인 회계 간요디 세권나 개숑 코네 라는 여배 다다 개숑기 신진 시진핑네 광서초게 떠난 너남베 우메람기 수주 토네 제메 구주당 회라민된 송베 랑시 랑용 라다 용발라 탑시 차고시 대링기 고갑 디규네 정규 차주인 랑레 파유낭 페민남 첩시기 개왕 롱수 제규 매버카르 최대당 미리기 투모 마인베 사제 릭숑당 기유소 민염 균진 체베 라왕 메버 내신베 두갑 하장 년다쟁 나르 벽이 로규스 종만용베 두갑들 랑레 제거 비미 겐션 파르솜 상매 나르벨 하고 심슈 체계기 벽이 짜던 룹답 지당 투모 마인베 최당 릭숑 기 제버 냠발라르소 민염 균진 슈고 강질 비미 딩수당 계제 망조 제 니쇼네 쳐주 차와 좀대기 흉는 가급에 무근는데 쉬규인 지는 이동 주변 다와 당배 체 주신인 내저 도지된도 배투기 콜레 왕전 탱 섭시바 레버 줍대 진호 공사 장군 친구 초라 저가 이슈 콜레 고네 딘슈 담비 슈갑 공부칸 니 초네 공장 야하 구 수슈 제규 가시 상부 토발 시제 비미 용기 찹슈데 거딘 라메도 체체 슈규 당 랑리 비미남 담지 소가 지디기 공부칸이 그 가신 주베 최베 네버 차주니 여담메베 비미 랭게 개지식 임베 오고 메버 랑게 랑송기 비미 탑즈당 지속의 최동소 강설 현재 민주화 그 다도 배전 난ခွ 비미남 전주도 전에 밀로 툭출하 송배 갑들 만저를 파유 니바답 자체 튠주 로람 난게 자가를 슝다 미마 회된 덴베 탑즈당 제거 비미 셰연다 최된 소라 변조 튠제 로교 난게기 계지 슝게 초대소 창마를 거딘 대신배 권에 투지치 슈주당 타된 진호 공사 장군 친부초 잠링 견도 지당 체라 시제 비미 용그 근자 봉년 담벌 꾸지 샤베 깨자르 된지 투기 셰공 타다 륜기 조바당 베든 단다 뉴드 세베 문든 슈규체 베베마 지들 한조기 질론 유동 줍드 다와 순베 체줄라 부처나
제림 족바델라 다른 제고 군중기 조오 이탈리 로티롤 기신지 쿠샵 orno Dr. orno combacher choki sungshe nangyo.
May I request our chief guest, Dr. Arno Kampacher, Honorable President of South Tyrol, to address the gathering.
Tashidele, first of all, I have to say thanks to the Sikong, Dr. Sangay, for inviting me to this ceremony. I met him in the year 2014 at home in the autonomous province of South Tyrol, Italy, immediately after my election as president and governor of this province. And he invited me to come here to Dharamsala. And it's a privilege for me to be here, and it's a great honor to participate to this ceremony. And it's a great honor for me too to be able to address the people of Tibet on this 58th anniversary of the Lhasa Uprising here in Dharamsala, your exile capital. It has been 20 years since His Holiness the Dalai Lama first came to visit my homeland, the autonomous province of South Tyrol in Italy. And since then, a strong bond of friendship developed between my people and you. This certainly has to do with the personal chemistry between my predecessor, Louis Durnwalder, and His Holiness. But it is also because the people of Tibet and the people of South Tyrol have a lot in common. We are both mountain people. We are both rooted in our traditions and our way of life. We both cherish freedom a lot. I think we are also both determined when it comes to defending our rights and especially our identity. We also share a common history. Until the end of World War I, my home province was a part of the Austrian Empire. Then we were annexed by Italy, and suddenly we found ourselves in a small German-speaking minority in a country which did not respect our language, our culture, and our traditions. In the years that followed, the government of Mussolini tried very hard to eradicate our identity and force us to become Italian in any sense. But we resisted, and we fought to preserve our language and culture. Most of it was peaceful, but in the course of the decade-long struggle, there were also violent episodes. In the end, we obtained an autonomy that allows us to be ourselves and live in keeping with our culture, our traditions, and our environment. We are a small minority of about 350,000 German speakers in a country with over 60 million inhabitants. We have beautiful mountains, a thriving agriculture, and millions of tourists who come to visit our province all year round. The fact that we speak two languages and our position on the border with Austria and Switzerland allows us to do business with our neighbors in the north and in the south. We have our representatives in the Italian Parliament and in Brussels, the seat of the European Union. Political delegations and representatives of minorities from all over the world come to study our model of autonomy and of peaceful coexistence between various language groups. Besides His Holiness, we had visits from various members of your parliament and of your Kashak come to South Tyrol to see how the autonomy functions. We did not choose to be part of Italy, but we tried to make the best of this situation, and I think we succeeded. It took decades to get to where we are now. It took patience, determination, and a strong will to keep our identity, our language, and our culture. It also took the good fortune to have as partner an Italian government willing to find a solution, and to have some external pressure from Austria, which lobbied our case in the international fora like the UN. I'm sure the Tibetan people are just as determined to struggle for their rights and for their survival as a people. You have been heroic in your fight that has cost many lives already. You have countrymen and women in Tibet still sacrificing themselves to protest against the unbearable oppression by the Chinese. Even though now it does not look like a solution is around the corner, you have to stick to your struggle because your cause is a just cause. You have every right to maintain your ancient cultural and religious heritage, your language, and the wisdom acquired over centuries of living in harmony with a forbidding environment in very high altitude. I'm sure, in the end, you will prevail. To help you in the meantime, our province, so small, has been supporting many projects related to education, healthcare, even the promotion of grassroots democracy in the refugee settlements all over India. Much of this was done under my predecessor, Louis Durnwalder. I have maintained this policy because I'm convinced it is the right thing to do. 50 years is a long time to live in exile. Life goes on, and a new generation comes along who have to continue the struggle of their parents and grandparents. We have to carry on with the same determination as those who had to leave their homeland Tibet. But no, you have friends to stand by your side. I had the privilege to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama just before this ceremony, and I made him one proposal we would like to organize a big congress in South Tyrol, inviting all the representatives of the minorities all over the world and mostly the representatives of autonomous regions, just to share experience and to show that the middle way approach does work. There is a possibility to come over conflicts and situations like this, and you are not alone. Thank you.
Dijelaya Zerim Gavadela, Shunde Kunje, France Trezo of Pedin Gavgur Sobe, Kusha Michel Raison Chog Sushenangyo.
Let me request Senator Michel Raison, President of Tibet Group in French Senate, to address the gathering.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, Messieurs les parlementaires, chers amis tibétains, chers amis occidentaux, aujourd'hui, vous célébrez la 58e journée nationale de l'insurrection tibétaine. Nous célébrons avec vous cette journée importante. C'est pour nous, la délégation française, ceux qui ont eu la chance de pouvoir venir ici aujourd'hui, mais aussi ceux qui sont de cœur avec nous, restés en France, un grand honneur. Nous sommes ici parce que son Excellence Lobsang Sangay nous a invités. Merci à lui. Notre groupe d'information sur le Tibet est composé d'une vingtaine de sénatrices et sénateurs de régions différentes, de sensibilités politiques différentes, mais nous sommes sans faille, très unis, parce que ce qui nous unit, c'est notre soif de vérité, notre soif de justice et notre soif des droits de l'homme. Mais il traduit Tsering petit à petit ou après, non? Faut peut-être que tu... Après tout, d'accord. Depuis ce terrible 10 mars 1959, le peuple tibétain a su se structurer. En 1960, le Dalai Lama est arrivé en Inde et il a aussitôt établi une charte fondamentale pour les Tibétains. Cette charte, elle est basée sur les droits de l'homme et aussi sur les principes démocratiques. La tâche fut certes rude, mais petit à petit, l'évolution a été positive. En 1991, le Dalai Lama ne désigne plus le Premier ministre, c'est le Parlement qui assume. En 1992, vous avez réussi à créer une institution indispensable, la Cour de justice. En 2001, le Parlement ne désigne plus le Premier ministre, ce sont vous, les Tibétains, les électeurs, qui le choisissez. Les institutions fonctionnent. Et les démocraties, quelle que soit où elles se trouvent, sont forcément différentes en fonction du contexte du moment, en fonction de la culture, en fonction de l'histoire. Mais il y a toujours des principes qui sont identiques. J'en citerai deux. À nouveau, les droits de l'homme et aussi la liberté de penser. Ce matin encore, le Dalai Lama nous le rappelait. Cette valeur ne doit pas tenir compte du type de pays, quel que soit son niveau, quel que soit son développement, également sa culture. Tous les hommes et toutes les femmes sont égaux. C'est tout le sens du combat que vous menez. C'est tout le sens du 10 mars 1959 à Lhasa. C'est aussi le sens du soutien que nous vous apportons, même si nous sommes conscients de la faiblesse de ce soutien et certainement de son manque d'efficacité. Mais soyez assurés que ce soutien, nous le maintenons. Et soyez aussi assurés de notre amitié de la délégation française et je le répète, des collègues qui sont restés en France, mais de l'amitié et du soutien de nombreux Français. Lorsque les Français ont appris qu'on venait ici, nous avons bénéficié d'un beaucoup plus grand soutien que lorsqu'on leur demande de nous soutenir pour nos propres élections. Merci.
May I read out the speech of Senator Rezon in English? Honorable Sikyong of the Central Tibetan Administration, ministers in the Kashak, Honorable Chairman of the Tibetan Parliament, and members of Tibetan Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and an immense pleasure for the members of our delegation to be here today in Dharamshala to commemorate with you this 58th National Day of the Tibetan National Uprising. First of all, a big thank you to Honorable Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sangye for taking this initiative to invite our group to participate in this important event. The International Information Group on Tibet in the French Senate is made up of over 20 women and men of all political background because support for Tibetan cause is not partisan, as it brings together parliamentarians concerned with truth, justice, and human rights. Since this historic day in Lhasa on March 10, 1959, we have come a long way. Just for a few examples, one of the first steps taken by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who had just arrived in India, was to establish in 1960 a fundamental charter for the Tibetans who followed him into exile, based on human rights and the values of democracy. This establishment of democratic institutions was clearly a priority for exiled Tibetans, even though the material situation was more precarious. In 1991, the Kashak was no longer appointed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but elected by the parliament. In 1992, you had a Court of Justice, Justice Commission. In 2001, the Kalun Tripa, now Sikyong, was directly chosen by people. Thus, the Tibetan democracy presents in its entirety the three branches of the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. We can only be impressed by the path you have traveled since 1959. No democracy is qualified to set itself up as a model. Each democracy is different, bearing its own values and specifics, and none is exactly the same as others, but we share in common is a strong and founding value of a part of the history of our country, the universalism of human rights. And it can therefore be asserted by observing your institutions and all the evolution since 1959 that these values must neither be relativized nor considered as good only for Westerners, as some claim. Beyond the friendship that binds us to you, there is a great respect for the most beautiful combat that lead a man towards freedom, tolerance, and respect for his identity. These battles, including that of March 10, 1959 in Lhasa, which are yours, are also ours. Rest assured that our friendship and support of the group and individuals are fully guaranteed. Thank you.
Zirim Dimpadela, Shungde, Kunju, France Tezo Tumi, Kushep Andre Gatulin, Chone Sungshenangyo.
I request Senator Andre Gatulin, who is also the Vice President of the Tibet Group in French Senate, to deliver a speech.
Thank you so much. It's a beautiful day, my dear friend and dear Tibetan people. So, I'm sorry for the young Tibetan who learn very well to speak English, because I'm French and my English is not so good, but I'm not the good example for that. As it has been said, I'm part of the French delegation for this event today. I'm also part of the international parliamentarian delegation, the group who last year came from Canada, from Italy, from Great Britain, from France, from Australia, and so on, to observe your democratic election. And I would like first to congratulate the Sikyong, my dear Dr. Lobsang Sangye, and also the new deputy speaker, and all your nice parliamentarians who had been elected last year in a very nice democratic system. It's for us, you know, we will have election in France in a few weeks, and the way the campaign is going on is not an example. You are the good example, because what we've noticed with this observatory group is that, okay, you have also some progress to do, but compare what the election that happened 5 years ago, all the recommendation we've done in the next time, you practice, you utilize our recommendation to be better and better in the democracy. And I would like to say one thing. Very often, people try to oppose tradition and modernity. But tradition, the real sense, the etymology of tradition is transmission. What is tradition? It is something that the elder gives, transmits to the younger. It's sometimes what a democratic country do for a new state, a new nation who want to move with the democratic transition. And I think that if you are strong, it is because your tradition is innovative, is creative. And I think the only tradition which survive is a moving tradition, is a living tradition. And I would like to congratulate you for your living tradition. You do not forget the past, but you are turned to the future. And I hope all the democratic world, led by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and that has been followed not by your parliament and all your administration, will give a bright future for other people. First, people living now in Tibet and who are under strong, awful repression. And also for all other countries who want to have their own identity, their own freedom, their own autonomy. So, as part of this team of observation, as a very personal, long backer, sustainer of your struggle, I might congratulate not only your administration, but all of you. Thank you.
Dijelaya Zerim Guadela, Canada Trezo Timisurba, Kushap Consiglio Dinino Chok Sungshenangyo.
I now request former Canadian Senator Concilio Di Nino to deliver a speech.
Tashidele, as has been said, I am from Canada, and let me assure you something which I hope you will take as encouragement. We have a very large, strong, and active community of Tibetans in Canada, and particularly in the city of Toronto. I have participated in March 10th commemoration probably 15 or more times in Toronto, and it's great to be here with all of you. And I want to make sure that you understand, when I go back, I'm going to tell my Tibetan friends how proud I am to be here today to celebrate, commemorate, not celebrate, March 10th with the Tibetan community in Dharamsala. Thank you for this invitation. Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sangay, I want to extend my deepest gratitude for asking me to say a few words this morning on behalf of our group that came here. But let me take a couple more minutes on hopefully encouraging the struggle and the people who have so valiantly been part of it for the last 58 years. Some of you may or may not know that the Canadian government granted His Holiness the Dalai Lama honorary Canadian citizenship some years ago. But as he says so many times, he doesn't have to pay taxes in our country. We let him away with that. That was really a pinnacle of the kinds of things that is happening around the world in support of Tibet. Some of you may or may not know that we have an organization called INPAT, International Network of Parliamentarians for Tibet. Andre Gattolin just mentioned his participation, but we have organizations across this country. In India, they actually created the INPAT organization under a different name. But on behalf of that organization, I'd like to bring greetings from our group here today, which includes Senator Lisa Singh and Paul Burke from Australia. And Paul Burke is the Australian Tibet Council Chair. As well, Matteo Mecacci of the International Campaign of Tibet, and Andre he's already introduced himself. Ladies and gentlemen, this group and many others were invited by the Parliament in exile to observe the 2016 elections for the Sikyang and members of the Parliament. A report on these elections, which includes an analysis of the elections and their compliance with international election standards and best practices, as well as recommendations intended to improve the system, will be reported and presented to Parliament later this week. I am pleased to report that Tibetans in exile have and continue to strongly embrace democracy. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is about remembering the Tibet, which is still occupied by China, where its citizens are denied the fundamental rights and freedoms we take for granted, not only here in India, but in most of the world as well. The task remains to keep focused and committed on supporting Tibet. In and out of Tibet, Tibetans have been struggling, have been persecuted in Tibet, and outside of Tibet, we have done whatever is possible to make sure that the struggle for a fair and just solution to this tragic and brutal situation in Tibet is one of these days soon resolved. Ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about examples. The guest speaker, the chief speaker, I should say, has talked about South Tyrol. Let me give you a couple of examples of situations that exist in Canada, which I think will also be ideas for us to consider as we go forth in developing this. Firstly, we have a province called Quebec. This province is constitutionally guaranteed the right to speak their language, which is French, practice their religion, and promote or celebrate their unique culture. In addition, the territory of Nunavut, which was created some 10, 12 years ago, has been granted similar privileges, indeed a form of self-government. Those are examples that can be added to the South Tyrol and many others across the world as a just and fair solution of the kind that we would hope one day will be available for Tibetans in Tibet. It's a challenge which I know has been difficult, a challenge which I know has also been greatly supported across the world. What we're here today for, at least what I'm here today for, and hopefully everybody else that is not Tibetan, is to make a commitment to reassure Tibetans to recommit ourselves to making sure that, as the Chief Speaker said, you are not alone, to making sure that you understand that there are many, many millions around the world that support your cause. I would like to tell you a little story about something that happened this past week in Toronto. I was asked to speak at the Losar celebration, and after my speech, I confessed to having a dream. And the dream is really very simple. I said, next year, or a year very soon in the future, this celebration I want to be part of again, but I want to be part of it in Lhasa. Thank you very much.
Dijelaya Zerim Chuvadela Pande Sikyong Choki Sungshen Nangyo.
I request Honorable Si Kyong to deliver the statement.
Pimi lana me buti konsekam gwen shimbuchola kucha da Pimi rawan gerlang chene longap ngap ge kowe tudengi nimor pebe mangzo kao sumgi zesu namba lesu namba yamne gindu gide mimang than sebe luptu namba inge de kasha dan sikyong ki sungde de jalonang chobachi Terini pögi gesal hasa chilo chikdong gujengap junga gu lor pö chög sumgi pömi segya pomo genshön tongda mangbe matu sambe chiktungi gwane gyamar shungi zensung la shibe gelang chene longap junga ge kowe tutengi nimbo chagi yö terde nganzo pö tensi mirigi chedu luso longjo le tang nangken desun yongla jeden than gyamar shungi duksugi suji wo Pimi saya chik ha dedong songwa tang Pyogi gonde gyaja gupchu kopgel ha la Torshi sok tangwa che la Tenso shugyu yi tuzik shikin Terini cho chikne nyange che gobe shiki nayang Cho shenne boba che gobe tuzik shikyan yin Teni chilo chikdong gupjangab chunga gu lor Teringi nimo dir Pimi tse dokza chikdigi Yamari shungi Pösö yongla zewang dukzub chebala Pöni pömi Dali lame wangchar techu cheba tsamju go She sok shiwe gwane Pömi mangi ngundu seldun cheyo Pömi rawan gerlangi nimo Lebni kap hasanni hajang tamdaki Nedang wo ye Tenyang tide tse sumnin Takje debe pöma Tongda nga zamtang, mengmi langkor tongda nyewa rudik tang ne, hase tongge yusa tabur gyurde pöminam jigna chimbyongang ne shinye. Debe turep chelha nang pöminam ne, gyashungi duksuk, tagnungi suji wo, kadu jizam nyonggo chungmila madobar, pömirawan tham, pögi chöda rikshung, Geyi koyu sungjob sogi che rangi lu so longche sok le tangtang hakbar chilo nidong gune tabar pö nang pömi gyada shibchu shengayi shen la tsewa meba chene ranglu mese tangde pö la rawang go kongsi cho pö la denden shu go she pömi ngundu seldun cheyo dodun shishuk pömi namki Shuma mebe ningdop tang, gyuwa mebe haksam la tene pyoegi chöda rikshung minyam gyunzin tang, pyoemi rawang tabzue dishin tseme shibe tohne gyungu tuba mase. Netse kyang kongtor tong tuba chungyo, terde zamlingi gyaka mangpe uti tang, shungmang chene pyoemi dendun la gyabjor tang, doksen nyamke jitor doshin yo. Tenyang, ngalo ari sinzi kushab obama chotham phemi lana me uthi chino khonsu chamge chimbo cho namni jete nangkap ari sinzi choki ume lamgi siju la gyabjor yoba mase khonsu choki kuzab thang gyana shungi kuzab war thempen dembe domel che goba laryang kumanangye 대신 닝외 구접 렉스 틸러슨 초 아리 치스 둥제 고샤 땡켈 낭갑 콩기 베이징 시슝 내 진줄 베슝암 달리라마 초기 구접 탄해 드멜 용탑 레 무트 꿀마 제규 임바탕 공서초 제태경 슈주인 셰속 렌뎁 나와 제수령 슈바단 첩지 고급 디던 뛰네 신진 사와 구샵 도널드 트럼프 초라 참지 탕 어리슝기 펠토 갑조 나르하 나웨 레바 슈주인 나로 유럽 저조기 강 야나 슝라 베가 시메 껴소 고베 렌드윈턴 여바탕 야나 슝기 철시된베 토네 라룽거 도시 탕 자주 전왕기 칠비 동신바 균주 숙천 나웨 토네 자다기 퇴주 직샤유 대신 스위스 통계의 지니바르 냠젤 계속이 도함이 톱단 현속이 초젠탱 숨주 섭시베 응눕도 계속이 라완덴베 도함이 톱단 톱 KK 미나토기 라룽 가르탕 야첸 가르니기 양아웨 내단탕 야나 슝기 게시 도함이 톱단기 팀지 카라 찌메기 베난기 도함이 톱단라 델식탕 출루톡 담자 첨부치기 유협에 투몬 작담 숙체 식별유 신지 시진핑기 야나 슝기 우세 고티 장 첨부 제신유 예자르 배랑종종 미망 십주 강서베 레드 년토의 남 카텔로 오글 체베 탑수 벨테 예드 예속라 팀 룩다르 독대 땅위에 꼬르탕 대양 배랑종종 직분낭 델로 미탕 직동 십계 십주 셰주 진송탕 미당 직동 딩겨 고주 고솜라 팀도 제여바 용다 예 최대라와 예 꼬르 야나미마 지튼 야컵기 쯔팀 튼진 수루베낭 셀고 연하양 범위처 톡 팀지 강탕 미트윈베 시주 락다르 제신유 데니 나로네 고츠ug데 야나 슝기 체시딘베 토네 세르당나리 낭덴 로블링기 최제 자준 동자 겔베 대강 도시탕 제왕기 자준 칠부 대총 야친 가르네 강 쯔마치 동점 칠부 땅유 칠부 땅외 자준남 원대 현랑 줄슈 미초바탕 최초기 최고 강양 벨미초바 소기 내당 지작 잠린 용첩 임베 쉽게 슈겔 마통 대신 야슝기 최루 레드기 소익 서베 겨주기 초용내 도담탕 당진 제베 시주락다 제신유 야나 슝기 공수자부근 전부 초기 딜로 나웨 도고르왕신니 팀겔타 쳄시기 락샤 인고로 년죽 제보마세 베네 도고르왕신 슈바르 로켄남 강고탕 지교 라케 칠두탕 베메 쇠바 칠튼 스무초 두가 능수 칠로 고베 zenga 땅와 속 문슈 규 숨네 담자 제유 군기 캔세터 잠링 낭 유고트 잠바 망슈 테 게리인 웬강 베미 규마 다쇼 슝기 레초 임바 토르양 치게 유카두 유고 도주탕 대시 년체 타는 낭베 내지 카두 내질 도주양 야나 슝네 치교 라켈 도주르 최진 제기 요바 마세 도유 캄 숨기 베미남 베기 사자 난쿨두 년체타 내고르 속수 도주양 강고탄 탐자 하장 첨부 제신유 빼나 예차르 도메 공범 공바 초틀멜람기 cấp 망미 버르체 짬데 자주인탕 베미 최절과 남 직난 깨고베 내단 소유 대신 도매 루추쿨네 나와 딱센 하모키르트 곰베 로코르기 참탕 쭝아 쮸바 속 젤도 도켄남 람파르도 강고 제바 속 중도 야나 슝네 베미소 야나 미마 쥐튠 야캅기 지왕 현탕 다와 시교 라케 톱탄 유바 따르 제테 둘교탕 초총 벽이 사자 능쿨도 양 도도기 라원 tö고바 제 년주 수주인 현양 베미츠 팀튼 톱단 순접탕 원대 카 10회권에 덤바 점기 진송尊주탕 작내 속 제신여 배나 저시봉주기 벽이 개유 순접체 팀튼 수독 제발 카젤기 예민축대尊juk 제여 대신 도매 아초 유초이 베민남기 미랍네 미랍할 최고로 자율기 러리 야나 슝기 때르강옥든기 코유 란뇌교 또르심바 대탕 양 캄미냐투 때르카 뜸베 제리기 코유 박족 쇠바 제 소소로 산의 베미체 코유 순접 제급의 레든 제발 년도와 망보 땅대 작은의 제유 되닝 베미남 골교 짬이야 제베 라와 메버 땐 우투 탑세기 랑루메세 동고기 내다양 소신유 나로 진더 중립의 난 저시랍den기 랑루메세 낭네 대동수 교류 대나 베미르 탐자 제주 참조 탕 예민 지릭 다대 강렬尊juk 제베 베민남 텔도 르르 동고바 조주인 베미 톡 탐자 지여 속이 내단 꼴 계시 2년도 한 내장 설독 투기여 태양 치료니동 주주로의 어리 슝기 최대 라왕타 조아미 톱단 꼴기 년도의 난 야나기 최대 라왕 태 믹셀 토난 고베 야컵 구 테르드 제베난 술여바 마세 내당 응알로레 제독도 침바양 코도 대신 치료니 동정아 주주로의 계지 년양 초배 년토 나야 야나 슝기 벽이 군데 칼라 담자 숙제 지기여바 돔갑도 대충 망조타 쳄시 라와 로미 톱단 속라 독십 제게 어리댄시 제배 슝데메인베 촉바 작진 라왕 강배 제배 치료니 동 주주로의 년토 낭도양 쳄시다 지망 톱단기 내당 점링 낭 독슈 낭네 독슈 앙니버테 베임바 타돔 세부잡도 되닝 베미 톡 담자 지체 동심베 시주 디니 야나 슝기 릭네 사제 세바테 죽 딜네 다절로 십주 송웨 제수 라리양 겨롱 제바 더부차유 테르데 야나 슝기 고지세 회톡 짐베 시주라 게르십기 야나 마르소 지켑 퉁지 후야 방기 회톡 짐베 고양기 시주 락다르 제거바탕 공스초기 되난 제베 님의 우메람기 시주 시샤 회데 딕차 용주로 공스초기 꾸잡탕 드물 겨투 용વાર 버글 겨는 제기유 나로 진드 중립의 낭 진호 공스 잠근 전부 초안에 별룩 낭베 쯤은 이슈 탐발 로주랑신 덴베 게시마이 라케 짤와탕 대신 가샤네 나르유 pyme 누슈 벨베 시주라 겨십기 시주 세라탕 대델 소젠 탱 당보 공과 제니 벽이 출시기 자샤 카기낭 pyme 남네 뉴번연분 영탑기 매율식인 가샤기 딜론네 송 진드순베 최중리 대신 벽이 pyme기 니몰 송지 슈규르 덴베 제유 공즈초기 레바 상사탕 저지 독산의 제거배 가샤 갈로 림펩신 가샤기 나더 응업주의 탑주의 원에 중주 로잉 나이낭 우메 람기 시주 시샤 별이 용라 명된 총배 랑조르 용탑탕 중주 로 응업주의 링 별미 딕수 무투 사대 균에 투바체데 뱀이 라왕 탑주 윤교 제주인 wengyang pimi zadun la nushi kongsa chok la shime tseme shuken yana shungi yukiham töge jerang ba kashi gi tsu maju rawan kala kene kongsa chok la sursa cheken pimi resung yoba choi 타실기 제법 대릭라 타직도 모걸탕 동래 지주인 제법 대릭니 표면은 굴 뚝싱탕 자가 년독 용시 인배 삼조 녀바 제거바 겨주 지주인 안단 참에 캔세레 시제 표면 지소나라 표면 용시에게 공서초라 sursa chege yungo ore nyejarang ari tholopchik gege dedongsu chingbe kap ani phebe som jibe nala logyada choksom degonge di tholopgi gege yin cheche kurangi som tiyor di phemiji mi chane kasha jimbe chane 공사 초라 디다베 sursa nawa imba ina 타직도 ngogoyes dinawa di korang 좀 tibedi 탑교 시다레스 근데 집에 깽기 뱀이 찌zo나 덥신 용야 똑담 펠리아 자가 년 독 제제탄데 가샤 숭지는 거버디 차 용거래 시제 칼라 마르주 라완 키고래 마르주 라완 키체 공사초라 sursa 나와데 싸와니니 디그 요마레 제슈아이 칸라스나 잠리나라 어리더부 임베이나 마르주 라완 요레 마르주 라완 시송 어리기 게다 메라당 추구 요레 칠루카기 빼제 임베이네야 메라당 추구 요레 때 임베이네야 야가기 마르주 라완 나라 야가기 게다 메라다야 파샤 야가기 게다기 둘로서야 파샤 야가기 게다 샤미야 이네 노르바 이네야 딜라 팀투 치고 야가 나라 베제 메라다야 파샤 베제 메라다와 이번 녀로 침부 시우 차고 디송자 마르시 라완 키체 아주 벽이 게다 메라다와 이나 아주 케 렌투서레베 간주르 땡주르 메라다와 임바 이나 아주 케 렌투서레베 렌토고 말어와 가나스나 마르주 라마시아라 참여래 참디 심과 신도 개체무시다래 가나스나 공수초 꾸디 림주 단답봐도 배 약합라 콩렐하 꾸디 림주 창마 까진치야 요 말에 제레시다 배 카바 종니 빠르게 데바디 데탑 메베 데바래 나도 젠조라 조르세 단데차라 망조스네레 마르주 라마세베이네레 공서초게 꺼딘 때니 중샤버지레 디칼라 키체 공서체를 수즈세베이나 타직도 넣어버래 뭐가 타직도 여치 쉬야디 아가시기 셰솔라 어리신지라 균주 지기도 왔어 야가기 쓰는 견주 지구도 왔어. 나도 인베 이내야 베베그 고티 공스 쳐라 아침에 슈마쇼가 가르레 스케지 지구도. 내내당 가가래. 어디신지 인베이나 나왜 랑기 미만 접지 슈기 이제 당도 랑네 페버레 왜 펜체 노르바 이내야 딕바 이내야 나주 칭의 용거래 견주 칭의 용거래. 야가기 쓰는 인베 이내야 당도 랑제 미만 접지 슈기 이제 페버레 딜 딕발라 나주 슈그레 마딕발라 견주 지그레 마신네 딕발라 견주 지그레다 이내야 공서 줬다고 인베이나 나슈 춘주 갑라 암도 딱세르네 라와 매체 군대 줍시바 문진싱에 배 슝게 문진체 데넬 해살라 덴데 슈체 나주기 팀된체 제수 딱 공로 주로 주든 패배 갑라 게미 망밀레체 회 난게 내다 자자 갑라 당한 주기 팀된 체 최신이 그 고원 용조 공수초는 나로나 제체 야표브레 회사회 제수 공로 니사단 패배 갑라 다회 전송 제사회 제수 아니 야갈라 패 용대 관 공로 니사단에 말해 Dudu Kabla Ganzula Desa Yomare, Drosa Yomare, Lobta Yomare, Kangba Yomare, Menga Yomare, Kongi Kadi Nyachi La Tene, Nantusama Tande Chala, Zamling Nala, Power Chimbeton, Dogwadi, Kongi Kadi. Kadi the Namia Majebe Tone, Nantu Tuta to Tegur Sigur Chedi, Kongsa Chore, Konglo Choksum Le Ha, Shugwa the Kongsa Choran, Yins Cheche, Kashane, Pali Shuguyola, Didabe Suza Chinge Samala, Samjo Chirona, Cheche Nende Shuan, Tuchana. Chilo Nidong Jubdi Lo Dishin. Pemi Dixune, Legulgi, Lor Sungzi, Chigi Imbatar, Pen Nangi Zara Nedan So, Geji Nang Modetan, Koto Yakhang Che Pelvetone, Gabjor Ngar Ha, Yongdab Chiguins, Teishin, Chilo Nidong Chopke, Loni, Peminam, Zenjul to Journey, Milu Tukju Kove, Tensoi, Tuzikshi Yina, Gabe Tuksum, Sojur, Pemine de Chayulgi, Yakab Kag Nang, Kadi Jedengi over Sungzi Shujuins. Tedin Kogop Tigu, Ari Gayong, Mangzo Tepse, Zenjul Pumi, Mangzo Pelrimla, Sengtugi Chaganawa Tang, Ari Roxone, Zenjul Pumi, Menju Tajong Leshir, Sengtu Yiksha, Nangwa Chela, Tuji Chetang, Hagbara Peminam, La Kadin Shindu Cheve, Yagar Use Shumang Nila, Mixel, Tuji Shuba the Chepchi. Gechi Kun Yong La Nebe, Pemi Dembe Tabzu La Yabjortang, Duxe Nyamke Nankingi Shungtang, Uti Tuzo, Nihonta, England, Canada, Chegi Tuzo, Tumi Teve, Tuzo, Tumi Shenka, Teshin Soget Che Yongla Hang, Tuji Che Lamedu Che Shugutang, GC, Peshi Ni, Nyamzum Machungwar, Mutune, Yabjor Yongwar, Rekul Shujuins. Tilo Chinda Tangbe Nang, Nejo Doji Dendu, Jino Consjamgun Chimbo Chone, Zelbe, Be Tugi Kolo Wang Shengi. Zeshen Legdup Chung Yabani, Zo Consjamgun Chimbo Chogi, Tuge Chintu Le Chungwa Yin La, Shordu Lalo War, Tamzi Zangma Yoba Yang, Chun Tops. Tugor Wang Shen Gap, Denshu, Derbu Shugap, Consjamgun Chimbo Chone, Kunglo Yal Ha Shujuyi. Kashi Sangbo Larian Pebani, Rangja Namgi, Sonam Yinbe, Gombo Kangnila, Tegu Yobe, Kewu Jitang, Gosu, Pemi Yongi, Tsub Shude, Gadi Lala du Che Che Shuba the Chepchik, Tedar Yongwar, Rangja Kangjeba Yongi, Jitun Sonamgi Chumba. Goju Shintu Kelchebe, Namkar Gebe Lela, Bebungtang, Gombo Kangni Chogi, Jisung Gadup Shuju. Pemi Nankul Choga Tengere Bangde, Tulam Tamzi Dr. Jigdil Je, Chegobe Begul, Garni Chiguyin, Teishin, Konsachogi, Galob Lamden Jipep Dar, Shije Pemiswe, Rangshe Nihungi, Yu, Changra, Tsume Tongwatang, Genje Chebsok, Bameki, Chajo Rik Bong Gobatang, Tei Tsabdo, Rangi, Putsai, Sheyun Tok, Jordan Tong Gobe, Regul Nimbu Shujutang, Rangri Benjogi, Nebab Sangbo Yoken Tsui Gang, Susui Pusatang, Mirigi Sheyun Tok, Jordan Tong Nang Yongwe Begul Shujuyin. Tade, General Consjamgan Chimbucho, Guzi Shabe Gayer Tenchi, Tugi Shagon Tada Lungi Dubatang, Shije Nyamzomki, Kesangi Nima, Yogne Nurdu Charwe, Rebata Mundu Shugda Shujuche, Tuchana. I see a lot of our friends from around the world, so I'll briefly summarize what I said in English. First of all, I would like to invite, and it's a great privilege and honor to have our chief guest on this day, Dr. Arno Compascia, President of South Tyrol, province of Italy, and his delegation, a lot of doctors. So I'll just mention that Dr. Dominic, Dr. Elizabeth, Dr. Gunther, Professor Ronald, Dr. Stephen, Dr. Harmon. This is the, I think, highest academic credentialed delegation we have from South Tyrol. So it's a great honor and privilege. And also, it's great honor that we have a delegation from France, the Presidento, Michel Raison. He is the president of Tibetan Parliamentary Support Group in the Parliament of France. And Senator André Gatulin, he spoke. He's a longtime friend. He's also doctor, yes. And Senator Anik Billen, Mr. Terry Munir, and also we have a delegation from Australia, Senator Lisa Singh. It's her second trip to Dharamsala. She's loving it. She'll be here for third time. And Senator retired, but I hesitate to mention Dinino, long-time friend. He met with His Holiness in 1994. Now it's been 24 years that he has been with us. So it's a great privilege and honor. And we have ICT President Matteo Macacci, Paul Broke, and Norman Baker from England. So to have all our friends to come here on this bit sunny but chilly day means a lot. Your presence on this politically sensitive and important day for Tibet sends a very profound message to Beijing. That dialogue is the way, peaceful way is the way, and middle way is the only way. And also to those Tibetans who are suffering in Tibet, your presence says loud and clear, even though you're suffering, no matter how repressive the Chinese system is, how much sufferings you undergo, we are with you. You are not alone. Dr. Arno, you said the right thing. You are not alone. We have friends from Italy, friends from France, Australia, and America, and all over the world. So thank you very much for coming. Today is the 58th anniversary, meaning it's been 58 years since Tibet was occupied. And as this morning His Holiness the Dalai Lama shared with you, on 10th March 1959, His Holiness the Dalai Lama received an invitation from the Chinese military camp to attend a cultural event. But he was told he cannot bring his bodyguards. If he does bring his bodyguards, they have to come without any arms. And Tibetans in Lhasa, represented by Tibetans from all three provinces, got suspicious, surrounded the place where he was living, and then they protested. It's very interesting to note, because on 10th March 1959, the capital city of Tibet, Lhasa, was surrounded by and filled with Chinese military personnel, and the environment was tense. And Tibetans, thousands and thousands from all over, they shouted the slogan, "Tibet belongs to Tibetans. Stop interfering in His Holiness the Dalai Lama's rule." Now today as we speak, on March 3rd, Chinese government had 5,000 Chinese military with 1,000 cars and trucks, military convoys, had a military drill in Lhasa, creating the same tense environment in Tibet. And of the 145 Tibetans who self-immolated, who burned themselves, their slogans continues to be freedom for Tibetans. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama returned to Tibet. So today is 58th anniversary. But the slogan of Tibetans in 1959 and slogans of Tibetans in Tibet even today, the tense environment in Lhasa then and tense environment in Lhasa today are exactly the same, if not worse. As His Holiness Dalai Lama said, after 50 years, the spirit of Tibetan people, the sense of solidarity of the Tibetan people, sense of unity of the Tibetan people, even though it's the third generation, their spirit is same, their spirit is strong, their slogans are same, their aspirations are same. That reflects how determined Tibetans are. But yet, given the systematic repression, how desperate they are also. Hence, they are burning themselves. Not just one, but 145. Just this last December, one more Tibetan burned himself to death. Having said that, we are very proud that international community has been with us, and your presence reflects that. Last year, when His Holiness Dalai Lama met with President Barack Obama, White House issued a statement supporting and applauding the middle way approach and urged the Chinese government to enter into dialogue between the envoys of the Dalai Lama and the representative of the Chinese government. And recently, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, in his confirmation statement, he said yes, he would meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama, and he encourages the dialogue between envoys of His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Tibetan representative. Even the European Union Parliament had an urgent resolution criticizing and condemning the demolition of Larungar and Yachengar, and also urged the Chinese government to enter into dialogue to solve the issue of Tibet. And just recently, just before the 34th session of the UN Human Rights Council, 6 UN special rapporteurs on various issues, environmental, religious freedom, and other issues, came out with a strong worded statement criticizing the Chinese government actions in Tibet and saying environment of Tibet needs to be protected, human rights of the Tibetan people needs to be respected. And the Chinese government has come out with a policy, the overarching policy on Tibet is reflected in the statement made by President Xi Jinping and other Chinese leaders. It says, China's security and stability is dependent on Tibet's security and stability. That means for China's security and stability, Tibet is the main issue. And on this basis, at a practical level, on individual Tibetans, the Chinese government policy is you must give up your security to gain harmony. Meaning you must spy on your neighbors and families if you want to gain bread and subsidies from the Chinese government. That means for them, security is more important than freedom of the Tibetan people. And as a case in point, just released report of the Intermediate People's Court of Tibet Autonomous Region points out they detained 1,446 Tibetans just last year, and 1,793 were indicted in the name of criminal cases, but actually they were freedom fighters, just in Thar. Even though the Chinese government claim in their constitution that Tibetans enjoy religious freedom, Article 36 says that. They broadcast Tibet are the master of their own region. But the demolition of Larungar monastery, where more than 10,000 monks and nuns and lay people live, now in 1-year plan, they're demolishing it and reduce it to 5,000 monks and nuns, which include Han Chinese as well. And from the Yachengar nunnery, they expelled, evicted more than 1,000 nuns. And the monks and nuns from Larungar and Yachengar had to sign a pledge never to return back, never to practice religion. So even though it's been 40 plus years, the Cultural Revolution in China ended, but these are the signs that the Cultural Revolution is reviving again in Tibet. Cultural Revolution is destruction and demolition of monasteries, eviction and expulsion of monks and nuns. So since 1959, more than 1 million Tibetans have perished. 98% of monasteries and nunneries were destroyed. But Tibetans have worked hard to rebuild monasteries, revive Buddhism. Yet again, Chinese government is taking similar action of Cultural Revolution to destroy our monasteries and expel monks and nuns from Tibetan Buddhist Institute. This year, we were very fortunate. His Holiness the Dalai Lama bestowed on us the 34th Kala Chakra, the highest Buddhist teaching ever. But the Chinese government labeled the Kala Chakra illegal and political. Now, can you imagine the Communist Party of China, which believes in atheism, which does not believe in religion, is saying, His Holiness Dalai Lama, your spiritual teaching is illegal and political. Not only that, those pilgrims who came to India and Nepal had to rush back because they were summoned. If you don't return by end of December, your subsidies will end. Your family and friends who have jobs in the government will lose their jobs. So many scrambled back to Tibet, and their passports were torn. Their passports were annulled, even at airports. Now, we know in this day and age, the largest number of tourists in the world are Chinese with passports. How come millions of Chinese can travel around the world with their passports, whereas not even 1 or 2% of Tibetans are given passports? Those who got their passport, even if they are Communist Party members, they are facing difficulties getting passports. As one Tibetan has said, from Tibet, one blogger wrote, for Tibetans, getting a passport is harder for a Tibetan than getting into a heaven. It's that difficult. If there is freedom of movement for Tibetans, Tibetans ought to get their passports. They should be able to freely travel around the world for educational, medical purposes, and especially for pilgrimages. So on environmental aspect also, mining is going on, deforestation is going on, and in Amchok and Minya, the mining was so severe, even the UN environmental experts have criticized the mining activities in Tibetan areas. One case which was published by New York Times and is covered widely by New York Times is the case of Tashi Wangchu, a bilingual education rights expert. The Chinese constitution and Chinese law says Tibetans can practice their own language, not only practice their own language, but can improve and use their language. But Tashi Wangchu, he said, okay, Chinese language medium instruction is fine. We also need a Tibetan language of instruction in schools. He is arrested. He is sentenced. Now, where is the actual implementation of laws? Where is the actual implementation of autonomy that South Tyrol enjoy? Now, these reports, we are not only stating these facts. 2000 annual report of U.S. Congressional Executive Commission has redesignated China among the countries of particular concern. Amnesty International report of 2015 and 16 has said, 2016 Freedom House report says, and ranks Tibet in the second worst political and civil rights after Syria. We read about Syria in the headlines of all the news media, but the Freedom House says the situation in Tibet is one step better than Syria. So this is how severe and repressive Tibet is, and it's made very clear by the reports of Amnesty International and Freedom House. So the solution, we think, is not the hard line and the wrong policies of the Chinese government, but a more liberal policies. And if they want, they can look at the former General Secretary of the Communist Party, Hu Yaobang. He initiated liberal policies towards Tibetan people. If you revive those liberal policies, that will bring basic freedom to Tibetan people and real peace, harmony, and stability in the Tibetan region. So I urge the international community to support the middle way approach and dialogue between envoys of His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people, and also for the Chinese government and the leadership. It is better that they heed this call earlier than later. I just want to point out that even in exile community, we are trying to strengthen the social foundation of the Tibetan freedom struggle. In December 2016, His Holiness the Dalai Lama conferred Geshe-ma degree. Now nuns can have a doctorate degree for the first time. The nuns can be teachers and the head of their own nunneries. So 20 nuns were awarded Geshema degree by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So this leads to the women empowerment also. And this Kasha has revised the Tibetan women empowerment policy and also had the first national conference of Tibetan women empowerment policy recently. And the day after, March 12th, will be observed as Tibetan Women's Day. And we will have Lisa Singh and Bilin, who will be speaking here in support of the Tibetan women empowerment, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself will grace and bless us on that day. Finally, I just want to thank all our supporters around the world, National Endowment for Democracy, for presenting a citation in recognition of the democratic institution of CTA. So we have election observers who came last year and certified the election. NED has also given us a citation honoring and applauding the Tibetan democratic system, and USAID for giving us a certificate of appreciation for our Tibetan Medicare system. We want to thank leaders around the world to be with us for all these years. In particular, I want to mention parliamentarians in Japan, Canada, and United Kingdom for hosting me and supporting the just cause of Tibet. This sends a message of hope and encouragement to Tibetans in Tibet. During the long life prayer offered made on the final day of the Kala Chakra, His Holiness the Dalai Lama reaffirmed his commitment to live for more than 100 years. I, on behalf of Central Tibetan Administration, really appreciate the commitment made by His Holiness Dalai Lama and want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to His Holiness, the great 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet. At the same time, I urge every Tibetan to take heed of His Holiness Dalai Lama's advice and earn collective merit, earn positive karma, so that our collective wisdom and collective strength can be fulfilled. While keeping unity as the paramount goal, we must pledge to renounce any regional or sectarian affiliation. Finally, we express our fervent prayers for the long life of our beloved leader, His Holiness the great 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet. May all his wishes be fulfilled. May the non-violent just cause of Tibet prevail. May we soon realize the joyful reunion of Tibetans in our homeland. Pei Gyalo, thank you.
Zerem ge thamadel dading pekim labdane denzik melam sungku taje changma kosheng to chani temujar de nyam to urdin nangyo.
With saying the prayer of truth, we have now come to end of this event. We have come to the end of this event. Thank you all.